You are listening to the BlahCade podcast. I am your host, Chris Freebus, aka Shut Your Trap. Joining me after a small hiatus, Morgs.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, belatedly.
You're right. We didn't
now.
expect. We didn't expect to have this long of a gap between the two of us talking, but holidays and work.
Yeah, they really kind of do. And it certainly did play a part in us sort of delaying things, but there's other things afoot as well, which kind of caused us to sort of hang off a little bit, which we'll talk about later, right, Chris?
Yeah, we sure will. But I just wanted to say thanks once again for Norman Stepanski for coming in last week and basically filling in for Jared, if you will.
Doing a
I don't
great
think
job
he
of
realized
filling
he was going to be. Yeah, I don't think he realized he was going to be the fill-in host, but I kind of turned it into that anyway.
Yeah, he did a great job. He's going to put me out of a job, I reckon.
Yeah, it's okay. I think he's already got one.
Yeah.
I want to make one clarification that he made to me after the podcast, because he prepared, even though he tried to be prepared regarding my question with the Nintendo Switch and the user interface. What he found out, the user interface that is in the Nintendo Switch right now, that is the original interface for that Oculus was using. And since then, they have a new interface for Oculus. So that was interface 1.0. Whether or not it's going to find its way over to Steam or iOS, that still wasn't answered.
Okay.
But that's kind of the deal with that one that I wanted to make sure I got out there, because he got back to me about that.
That's good. Yeah. I still haven't seen the Switch version running, but
yeah, it runs pretty dang well, I gotta say that. And like I said, the UI works right now because of the number of tables being small. As soon as you get over 25 tables, it's gonna be a nightmare. Yeah, if it goes that many. But for right now, it works just fine. But I don't know, and I don't know why. I think it's just because I hate looking at loading screens that are just the words loading. But the fact that it throws up the actual flyers from the table that you're loading in, I think is really cool. That's
actually fine.
And they were nice high-res images. Like, you could actually read them. It wasn't just some blurred out blob. So
that's such an often forgotten part of the TPA. Like, they've got flyers for every single game in the game in TPA, but I never see them. I never actively go and seek them out. And it's interesting to see how they sold pinball back in the 80s and the 90s. Like, it was very different to how they're doing it now. And it's almost part of the history of the table to actually see how they do that. So it would be nice if they did the same thing in TPA.
Well, but the wording is also hilarious just because it's all about quarter drops.
Oh, yeah.
How to get the most sales out of your machine possible.
It'll have people lining up for quarter drops.
Yeah, it's so mercenary and so much different than how Stern sells their tables today.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of
revolutionary operator features that will guarantee massive earnings in the cash box. It's like that, It's hilarious. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, so things that have been going on with us. Let's just jump right into this.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've hinted about it on the Twitter feed that we were going with a new logo, and so some time and effort was put in by ourselves to come up with something that represents the show, say, a little bit better. So sorry if you were a fan of the microphone BlahCade logo, but the problem was it just didn't say pinball. And little business insider here, it's when you don't have pinball in your logo or in your name, it makes it more difficult for Google searches and iTunes to find you. So
yeah, really difficult,
we wanted
actually.
to So we wanted to make some changes to maybe try and get us a little bit more traffic for listenership. So one of those changes, and I even forgot to say it just in the intro here, we're going to try and start referring to ourselves as the BlahCade Pinball Podcast.
Yes.
Just
dropping that little word pinball in here and there.
You know, kind of the same token that also then with our visual on the logo to put some pinball iconography. Jeez, that's a hard one.
Big words for this early in the morning. Well, late at night.
I was gonna say early for you. Hey man, it's after lunch for me. But yeah, we wanted to get something that's a little more identifiable quickly with the logo that says pinball, as opposed to you having to stare at it and go, "Hey, look, there's this subtle little
there's elements
hole
of pinball in
the
there
B that looks like a flipper, and the other part looks like a ball, but they're not to scale." And you know, so we came up.
A logo really does have to slap you in the face as to what you're about, and the mic was very cool in the way it was designed, but it really didn't say pinball.
It said podcast.
It did say podcast, which is like half the battle, right? But yeah, pinball, not so much.
So that was step one, and that took there was many back and forth sessions between me and Jared with me learning all sorts of things on Adobe Illustrator and Jared poo-pooing them really fast.
But the thing is that like the whole process of doing it though was the way it should be done, like just fast iteration. And the good thing that Chris doesn't do is get critical about the work he's done, which is really hard for some designers to not be. A lot of designers will go, "Oh, you know, this is the design," and lump it essentially. But because Chris is not an official designer, it was just like, okay, well, let's just try this and try that, and you know, we got there pretty quick.
We did. And if you're wondering, at one point we did a poll between two different logos. One of them had over the A of the blah signal radio noise things that everybody started referring to as Wi-Fi signals.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi signals.
I rather liked it because I felt that still said podcast. Jared rather hated it, and we threw it up to a vote. And man, that thing was split down the middle for quite a while. It was interesting.
It was, eh?
Yeah. Well, what's funny was the people on Twitter all really liked it, and which included a lot of podcast people. And then the people that were on Pinball Arcade Fans website, they all hated it, or didn't hate it, but voted against it. And so it was one of those things. It was like, oh my God, we're not going to come to a consensus. But eventually we did. And I think the tipping point for me, Jared, and I didn't mention this to you, was a friend of mine who is a graphic designer. He voted for the cleaner look, and I went, okay,
yeah.
He actually does know.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, he kind of knows what he's saying. So that was that.
The thing is, a lot of the time where I work, I'm working really closely with designers anyhow. So I sort of, by osmosis, I learn what's right and what's probably not so right.
Yeah.
So I had a feeling that it was going to be the non-Wi-Fi one, but it's always good to get a second opinion, particularly when you're not an expert in your field. So
right.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why all this effort to get a new logo, well, that falls into the next bit, which is we built a new website.
Yeah. Well, we didn't actually build a new website. We switched over to medium.com. Medium.com is one of the premier platforms for sharing thoughts about things. And the advantage with medium.com is that it's very clean. It's very easy to use. There's even an app for it. So you can subscribe to the podcasts with just a tap and get updates when new articles are released. And it also allows us to branch out from what was just originally a flat list of episodes. So there's a really strong archiving feature on the site. So you can actually go back through past episodes and see things like interviews. When I've been redesigning the site, I've actually separated the interviews and special guests out into a separate section, because I know out of all the posts, of course, interviews are the most popular. So we want to make sure that if you guys want to go back in time and see those interviews again, you can see them really easily. So I did that as well. And it just allows us to be a little bit more dynamic in what we offer on the site, rather than the static site that I was using originally. It was fine, when we only had 30 or 40 episodes, but now we've got 120. The we're fast outgrowing the navigation. And it's actually thanks to a couple of people on the Pinball Arcade fans forum that made us realize that, because they were going, oh, I remember this episode. It was ages ago when I think it was a Zen interview with Bobby. And she goes, oh, yeah, there was this episode. I'll see if I can find it. And they shared their progress of trying to find it. Yeah, I think it was sort of like episode 40, but I'm not sure. And it was, I could tell, I went, okay. It was at that point I went, okay, our navigation is starting to outgrow us as a podcast. So eventually, sometime real soon, I'll need to fix that. And it took 6 months. So...
And on top of that, there was me wanting to do some of my rambling writing, if you will.
Yeah.
Now that I like to write things, and I had no way of posting it to the other site, just because it was kind of tech heavy.
Well, it was using like the way we used to do those posts is I would open up a text editor and I'd use a markup language called ASCII-Doc. And it was fine. It's a little bit like Markdown for those people who know what lightweight markup language is. But Chris was going, and I could have told him how to use ASCII-Doc, but honestly, I thought, no, hang on. I need to realize that this is a sign that I need to think for a minute, because he could learn something, but why should he have to learn something? Like, all he wants to do is share his thoughts. On movies. Why should he have to learn a markup language for him to do that and then work out how to use this static site tool to post an idea up? And I thought, you know what, you should just set up a Medium account and post your thoughts up on a nice Medium account. It's really nice user experience. I went, hang on a second. we could all use that, because it's really nice. But then we ran into a problem though, didn't we, Chris? We ran into a little bit of a hitch, which is the next part of the discussion. So
yeah, we would like to tell you that you can continue to go to BlahCadePinball.com, but that's not going to work anymore.
Well, not to the top level domain. We have to make a few changes to the way that we structure the site. And the reason is, and this is totally my fault because I didn't read their K-Base articles correctly, or Google dumped me to some old K-Base articles with the old information. But Medium at one point allowed you to spend $70 and you could actually use your own custom URL, like BlahCadePinball.com. And I thought, cool, I'll go down the path of migrating 120 episodes over to the service, and took me about a week to do it. And I thought, cool, well, I'll go and set up that domain now, right? So I go to the link in the settings that says, oh, use your own domain. And it's like, no can has. We are not offering custom domains at the moment to everyone. So if you've got an existing one, you can continue to use it, but no new applications are being accepted. I went, oh, that's a bit of a problem.
And this after we had loaded in all of our imagery and articles and gotten it all lined up and set up, the way that we like it looking.
I think together we would have spent probably about 2 weeks at this point, on and off, sort of total time between us, getting it to the point it was. And then I worked out that we couldn't do the URL, and I went, oh, okay. So we're faced with two options. We tell everyone that the new domain is medium.com/BlahCade-pinball-podcast, which is the actual domain name that Medium has given us, which is fine. Or we think laterally. So what I've done is I'm using a service called Rebrandly. And what it allows you to do, it's basically a short URL system that you can actually use a custom domain on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set the custom domain of BlahCadePinball.com. And then we're going to make short URLs that redirect over to certain parts of the medium.com website. So it gives you the choice, dear listener. You can, if you like to use Medium exclusively and you know that our website is BlahCade-Pinball-podcast on Medium, fine. You can find us there. But if you're listening to the show and you want to get there quickly for the first time, we'll have links in the show notes that direct you to the front page of our website on Medium, and it'll always be the latest episodes there. So you'll see BlahCadePinball.com/episodes in all our Twitter links when we do a new show, and announce that on Twitter, and that will be like that'll jump you to the latest episode. So it'll give you an in to the website and not have you won't have to worry initially about putting in long URLs. So
what we're saying is, again, go to BlahCadePinball.com/episodes.
Yeah,
bookmark it.
Yeah, because that's our new site basically. That'll get you right in to the new site.
Exactly. So take a look at it. We're happy with the look, and also, like I said, there's going to be well, part of the reason why I wanted to do the writing thing is I went ahead and bought one of those Movie Pass things, which we talked about before. So it was I spent $90 and I get a year-long subscription to go see any movie I want, anytime I want, once a day.
Once a day. That's a lot. That's 365 days of movies, man. For $90 potentially.
And,
that's not bad.
And considering that for me, when I would buy matinee tickets, which is usually what I would do, or I'd buy them at Costco, the discount ticket, I was basically spending $10 a movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
And last year I went and saw 15 in the theater.
So
completely makes sense.
Money. and the only reason why you probably would have only seen 15 is because they're $10 a ticket.
Well, it's $10 a ticket. It's the time to go, and it's well, do I really want to spend the money to go see this, or do I just wait for it to come out on video? Well, now I kind of don't have an excuse because the money is already spent, and all I have to do is see 9 movies and throughout the course of the year, and it'll have paid for itself. So I'm more apt to go see a lot more in the theater on a whim. It's 10 o'clock at night. The kid's asleep. There's a showing at 10:30. I got nothing doing in the morning. Boom, let's go. I'm there.
Done. Yeah.
Done.
Your wife isn't going to see very much of you, is she?
She'll probably be like, "Yeah, he's out of the house."
Hooray! $90 well spent.
Yeah, So what I wanted to do was maybe start trying to, and again, this is just me honing my writing skills, that maybe I would start reviewing every single time I went and saw a movie. And since it wouldn't be me waiting until they come out on video, it'd actually be current and timely, and then makes sense. So that's something that I'm planning on getting to and doing. The funny thing is I have not seen a single movie yet since Last Jedi.
Getting it.
But that always happens. I never see any movies in January other than the one movie that I saw in December. So it's par for course for me.
I haven't seen Last Jedi yet. So I'm a terrible person.
That's okay. Neither is my wife, and she's a big Star Wars fan. But hopefully we're going to go on Tuesday. I think I've guilted her into needing to see it and not waiting.
I can't actually believe it's still running here. Like
it's only been out a month.
But most movies here, after a month, you get like one showing a day,
Yeah.
But I guess it's a quiet season though, isn't it? So there's not a big volume of movies throwing through, so they can leave them running longer.
No, because January tends to be a dumping ground for movies that aren't very good.
Yes.
Either they're not very good, or they're only awards movies that they released it in December and then they're going into wide release after that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Speaking of crazy URLs, my son wants people to go visit his site. You sure you want people to visit your site? You freak out last time I mentioned something about going and visiting your site. Okay, I'm gonna give this out here, folks. Again, this is a 12-year-old and his beginnings of being a writer. So crazy. We're
going to start somewhere.
Yeah. So crazy website action. So it's the old HTTPS thing. sites.google.com/view/trash-bois BWAH-central. And that's all about my son and his friends. They write stories about their stuffed bears.
Cool. You know what I reckon? Sounds like he could do with a Rebrandly link.
Oh my God, yes, right?
Yes, he could totally do with a Rebrandly link service there.
Well, the other day he was trying to over the phone tell his one grandmother what the web address was, and I was just like, oh my god, just email it to her. She's never going to write all this down and get it correct.
Exactly.
So yeah. Speaking of other writings, just to give you guys a heads up, there's a website called This Week in Pinball, and he's always posting every week, multiple times during the week, different articles and stuff about pinball.
Who runs that site again? Who's the writer behind it? There's only one guy, eh?
It's just Jeff, and I'm not sure what his last name is. I'm sure I have it somewhere, but anyway,
friend of the show, Jeff.
Friend of the show, Jeff. Yeah, he had reached out to us and see if we'd be interested in informing his audience a little bit more about digital pinball, because his site is all about real pinball, as is most people's sites, and us being the rare breed of being almost exclusively about digital pinball.
We are the number one resource on the podcast scene for digital pinball.
That's right. So I decided, okay, sure, what the heck? Let me see what I can whip up because he kind of wanted a history of digital pinball.
Where do you start?
Right? Where do you start? And so I started just writing, and before you know it, I had 7 pages worth of history.
Wow.
Going back, starting with basically the Atari 2600.
Wow, that's wow! You really are going back through.
Yeah, went back, and here's the funny thing. To somebody that doesn't know anything about digital pinball, I'm sure this is more information than they ever possibly would want to know about digital pinball. To people like Jared and myself, it's like, okay, thanks for barely scratching the surface.
Yeah. But, you got to know your audience, right?
Like, you got to know your audience.
People, I mean, 7 pages, which won't be 7 pages when you publish it to the web, but that's
it'll be even longer.
Information. Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, it'll be a lot to digest.
When I say 7 pages, this is me typing on Google Docs. So like a Word document, just paragraph.
Yeah. Okay.
So now you need
that's going to be brutal then.
Right. So he says he's probably going to post it as one big story, which he knows his audience. But once he posts it, I might wind up posting it on our site too if people want to read it, and I'll break it up into bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, we'll do it as we can actually have that as because we can have it as a separate part of our website, the history of digital pinball, and I can make that a separate node on the website because we have the flexibility now. Thank you, me.
We have the flexibility. Yeah. All sorts of stuff going on that front. So let's move on to actual pinball. I know, scary, folks, but
because there's been some stuff.
There's been some things. First off, let's talk about briefly the fact that Sorcerer is out in beta on Pinball Arcade fans, or not Pinball Arcade fans, just Pinball Arcade.
Pinball Arcade,
yeah. And I had a look at it, and I gotta say, I forgot how cool the art is. It's a really good-looking table.
Man, it looks so good. I've never seen this table ever. This is my first exposure to it.
Oh, okay.
Geez, it is beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful table.
Yeah.
The issue that we're having in the beta right now, and this is specifically with DX11, which I'm going to go into a little rant here in a moment about the DXs.
Okay.
But the insert
DX
lights.
Sector.
Yeah.
Well.
Currently, the insert lights are all kinds of wonky in terms of this is what happens when you're dealing with previously baked-in lighting and trying to then put in dynamic lighting. That you'll get things like the insert will be blinking as it will, saying for this is where you want the ball to go, and it'll be nice and bright. Then you have the ball pass through there, and it now should be a constant blink, or a constant lit insert. And it is, but it's significantly dimmer than it was prior.
Right.
And that kind of thing drives me bonkers. And I tried turning up bulb brightness, and that's when I realized it was just, no, this is an issue that they're going to fix. I know that. But it comes into some of the inserts are the perfect brightness for how they are right now. That when you have the table, the bulb brightness set to 50%, they're glowing. You can read what's actually printed on them. You can tell
they're not nuked.
They're not nuked. And what I'm fearful of is that they're going to get nuked by the end of this. which is what always happens. So I made sure that I pointed out when I put in my little notes for the beta of, hey, look at this particular insert at 50% bulb brightness. That's perfect. Now make everything else. Yeah, lock that in, match everything else to that one, and be golden.
Yeah, right.
So no, what I was going to say and I know you don't suffer for any of this, Jared, because you don't deal with DX. It's only on the PC that we have this. But we have DX9 and DX11. And when we're dealing with the betas on these, it's amazing how many problems crop up because it works in one and not in the other. And it's almost as if they're two completely different programs, because they'll fix a bug in DX11 or in DX9 and it'll cause a bug in DX11, or vice versa. And it's like and even to the point that when you click on Steam and you select Pinball Arcade, a little box pops up that says, asking you, do you want to play DX9, DX11, and then there's game configuration. When you push game configuration, that's when it all of a sudden asks you, what aspect ratio do you want, all the anti-aliasing and stuff. So it's all outside of the game itself.
Oh, okay.
It really bothers me, because now you set it, now you got to turn that off, now you got to start the game again, now you let the game load, the game loads, now you look at what happened, and you go, oh no, I don't like that. Great, now you got to turn the game off, you got to go back in, restart, get that configuration box up, reset your configurations. It's like, why can this not be like every other game out there,
pass through,
done in the game itself?
Yep. So plugging into the DX framework and displaying the options in game, and basically just toggling those settings on and off at the application or the code.
Well, I'll give you because I was having this discussion this morning with Pinball Wiz 45B, where he goes, well, DX9 is no longer available in Zen because it's all Pinball FX 3, which is DX11.
Yep.
And I said, that's fine, but here's the thing that Pinball FX 3 does. I can go into graphics settings and I can turn off ball trails. I can turn off graphical detail. I can turn off shadows. I can turn off ball reflection. I can do all of that in the game, and then it'll pop the little window say, are you sure you want to keep these settings? Yeah, yes, boom. Now all of a sudden I see what it looks like. If I don't like it, I can go right back in. It's literally a 10-second.
It's real time. Yeah,
it's real time. And the thing that I know that this works, because my laptop, which is not very powerful at all, can then run Pinball FX 3 when I have all those settings turned off. So I'm just curious to know, why is it that Farsight hasn't done the DX11 version of this program in such a way that we can get rid of DX9 completely, so they're only having to deal with one program per se, and just either have it a toggle switch where you're toggling between DX9 and DX11, or do this very thing where you can just start dumping all the graphical settings?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's probably because the graphical settings are, I think, probably kind of semi-baked in. So you've got the whole concept of, if you turn off, like with Zen, because their whole table infrastructure is fully rendered, you're essentially not overlaying components onto a canvas. When I say canvas, I mean like, digitally scanned assets that are assembled, and it's sort of like a composited version of a game rather than a rendered completely version of a game. So what I think is happening there is, because if they want to turn off certain things, like if you want to turn off flash of bloom, if you want to turn off reflections, if you want to turn off all these things, it's essentially a layer in the game that they need to then turn off. Like it would be alpha panes off, alpha panes on. So that might actually be too complex for them to actually layer like that with the current construct of the game. I have a feeling that to make it work, they would have to re-architect the way they do the graphics in the game, and I think that's pretty non-trivial. And as you can tell, I am wildly speculating here because I don't quite know how it would work, but based on what I know of of graphics and things like that, I suspect that that's the reason why they are going with 2 versions, because it's either their on-off switch is DX9 or DX11. Basically, that's it. That's the level of precision you have.
It's doubling the amount of work that they have to do in terms of bug squashing.
Oh, definitely.
Right off the top, it's doubling, and then it compounds when. So last time, when there was the update, I forget what the table was last time. All of a sudden, the local high scores, went bonkers. Like we're talking hundreds of billion worth of points. Suddenly was the top score. I mean, it completely jacked up the local high scores on many tables.
Right.
And some people were worried that it was screwing up their achievements. And we've gone into it before about the stupidity of how achievements are saved. That if I have this on my computer right now and then I want to go play the game on my laptop and I load up TPA, it completely wipes everything, which is absurd.
It is absurd.
And the thing is that apparently this might have happened. The score thing might have happened because they were trying to deal with the cloud saving, but it's DX9 saves data differently than DX11 apparently.
But why would a graphics framework have any interplay with how the core game logic works? That's my question.
I don't know, and I don't know if the whole idea of the local high scores is what's screwing up, because they're localizing them to a computer as opposed to localizing them to the user, which I would think it would be the better thing to do, is just localize it to the user, so that those follow you, your high scores follow you that way. But because your leaderboards obviously aren't tied to the computer, those are tied to whatever server that they're dealing with. I don't know. It's one of these things where it's like I feel like they've tied themselves into knots, and there's such a simpler way of handling it.
There's definitely a simpler way of handling it, but I think probably the way to get there would be weeks of rework to actually get it to work right, and that's the punishment, right? Like, it is the benefit of doing the rework actually going to make a big difference to the user experience on a day-to-day basis? Because remember, this only really frustrates you when you have to reinstall Steam on a computer, which is not that often.
No. But that's not what I'm saying. I have Steam installed on my laptop. I have Steam installed on my PC. I usually play TPA on the PC. If I am on my laptop and I go and play TPA, it wipes it across the board. So the next time I go on my PC, all my achievements are gone.
So if for those people who use more than one Steam device, then that is the problem. And
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing on, say, a Surface Pro, and then you've got your main computer that you also have Steam on, then yeah, that's not very good at all.
That's annoying.
It's annoying. It's not good. And it's the same. If it makes you feel any better, it's very similar on Google Play games as well for Android. Like the fact that I'll keep on going back to this, the fact I had to write a user guide on how not to screw your same games up on Google Play games is testament to a bad user experience, right?
Yeah.
So the way that Farsight is managing their saves could be improved, and I think we've talked about this in a prior episode where they need to use the Farsight ID as the canonical save game system, and that's all they need to do. If they did that, and they're not having to plug into all these different ecosystems save mechanisms. That is the way to solve the problem.
And then, like I said, in terms of graphic and stuff, I just wish that it was load the game, go into the menu there under settings, and under settings. No. Well, no, I'm not talking about the game saves. I'm talking about graphics. But I go into settings, and that is in settings that I can set what is my screen resolution, that I can set whether I have ball trails, that am I using post-processing or not post-processing? What's the anti-aliasing that's going on? Let me do it in the game so that it immediately I can see the results. as opposed to having to go in and out, in and out, in and out. Because for some reason, and this is where I'm just completely baffled, and this might just be with me trying to play the beta, but the DX9 version sucks performance-wise. It's like the ball's in slow motion.
All right.
And there's no reason why the ball should be in slow motion in DX9 and working perfectly fine in DX11.
Well, they probably optimized for DX11, and DX9, because it's older architecture, is lagging. So really, that's a good sign that they just need to cut support for 9. Well, what the biggest question is versus 9 versus 11.
I cannot run 11. I cannot run 11 on my laptop.
Yep. Well, that's fine. On those devices that aren't powerful enough to run 11, then they get flat mode. They basically get no visual effects.
And that's what I'm saying. There should be that toggle in the game itself.
There's no toggle. It's just this game, if you do not have DX installed, the DX11 installed, you don't get any graphical effects. You can still run it, but everything's flat.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off. Like, we'll let you play it, but your game experience is going to be poor. Just like on the old box product that you used to buy from the store, you'll need a minimum spec of 486 with 2 meg of RAM to run this game. But you should really be playing with a Pentium 1 and, 1 gig of RAM and a video card to have maximum enjoyment from this game. We'll let you run it, but you're going to have a bad time. But you can run it because it's your choice as a consumer. And that's what it comes down to, right? Like, that's been around for ages in computer software. So
right, been around for ages, but it's not in the lexicon of Farsight.
I know, and it needs to start becoming in the lexicon. Like, you need to do, as a product manager here, I would be putting my hat on and saying, right, so how many users are on 9 and how many users on 11? Of those users, what architecture are they using? Like, what is the reported PC architecture and processes that they're using? Look at the averages, look at the amount of money these people are spending, and then make a decision based on data to cut it and or not cut it and work around a different solution. That's what I'm saying.
My solution is, and this is, again, it's all coming back to rolling everything into the settings, is you only have the DX11 version, but you can turn off all the graphical things so that it works on your computer. I mean, look, when I was playing, if I throw in, this actually happened before I had the computer that I have now, but when I threw in Tomb Raider for the first time, the new revamped version, it was like, well, I only am getting medium detail settings. I can't view the high detail, and I can't have the cool floaty hair that she has. Instead, I'm going to have the locked-in clump of hair. There's all these settings that every other PC game has there in the menu that allows you to, even on a bad computer, still run and play the game. And you can kind of pick and choose your poison in terms of when you want to have slowdown, you might say. And because it's all under the same banner, you're only having to squash one set of bugs and dealing with it that way.
It makes sense.
I don't know. I just, it's one of those things that makes me scratch my head, and clearly I wasn't going to ask Norman about any of that because I didn't want to do any gotcha moments, but
no.
it's one of those things that just it baffles me sometimes, where it's like, have you guys never played another game on a PC?
Yeah, I think there's definitely improvements that can be made there. I personally think that the way I would approach it if I was the product manager would be to look at the numbers first, and then actually, rather than trying to, step one, remove the problem, which is the difference between DX9 and DX11. And that's known to be causing issues with production at the moment. So I would remove that issue from production first. And then once I have a stable backplane to work against, which is DX11, I then start to incrementally look at putting in those settings options into the game. But really, the problem, it really is the fact that DX9 and DX11 exist together, and that needs to be solved first. Yeah, that's what I do. But I'm not saying that your idea isn't the way they should be moving towards, because it is. It makes absolute sense that they should actually put in settings in game, like every other app and every other program on the PC. But there are things that they need to overcome first before they can do that, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. Just my 2 cents. What else has been going on with the pinball world? Do we have anything else that's timely?
Yes, I do actually have something else that popped into my my Android device the other day. You might remember ages ago we were talking about a little app called Snowball.
Yeah.
Now, Snowball, for those of you who aren't aware of it, is basically one of those top-down pinball games, which is over a really large playfield area. So the interesting feature with this game is you can get into multi-ball, and as you get into multi-ball, the game zooms out like a very far perspective, so you can see all the balls in all the areas of the playfield at one time. And it's a very sort of a casual game. It's themed with a snow theme, and you're basically shooting your snowball around a sort of arena with lots of different obstacles and stuff to do. And
I think, as we described it back then, it's a pinball game in that the user interface uses flipper and ball mechanics, but it's not a pinball game in terms of being a typical rectangular shape pinball where all the action is happening on one single plane. This is your the flippers are your navigation tool. You're navigating.
That's right.
Around. So pinball, yes, but also no.
It reminds me a lot, actually. This game, and I know that some listeners will be going, "Oh yes," when I say this, but if you remember on Game Boy, a game called Revenge of the Gator Pinball. Now, the game was split up in different screens because of the limitations of the platform, but essentially it would behave like this game does now if it was actually laid out in one linear sort of a pattern, and you could see all the screens in one. Yeah. So that's essentially what they've done here. So the update that they did is they've put a few more different achievements that you need to do in the game. They've changed the playfield slightly as well. So there are extra obstacles in some areas that were deemed a little bit too easy. So essentially they've rebalanced parts of the playfield, which is very interesting. But the biggest feature they've done is they put in night mode. So you've actually got now, when you play, rather than being super white, everything's sort of got this bluer tinge to it, and your ball and all the environments, even on mobile, have environmental lighting to them. So so you've got there's like these little magnetic poles in the game, which light up and spark. Now, in the normal game, they didn't really do very much in the daytime mode, but in the nighttime mode, they look really cool. Like, you get all this environmental lighting flying off them as the sparks are flying, and they look really good. And there's also other things in the game, like the ball casts a slight amount of light as well. It glows very subtly, so as it's going around the playfield, it's subtly lighting up the playfield as it's going around. It's really quite nice. I've actually had a couple of games on it now, and I'm going, yeah, this is really neat. So if you've got the game, go and update it and have a look and tell us what you reckon about it. And if you don't have it, the game is very inexpensive. And look, for the cost of entry for it, there's no in-app purchases after you've bought it, so it's fully unlocked. And yeah, it's a bit of fun. If you like those sort of wide, expansive sort of pinball games that are more casual rather than simulation.
Yeah, I don't.
No, you're not a fan of this title.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of. I don't know. I do like my pinball to be pinball. That being said, I have no problem with the arcadey or the pure video nature, a la Zen. But these top-down, they just remind me of those little plastic pinball with the BB in it that you would, play as a kid. It has no weight, and there's nothing interesting to it. It almost goes back to why I'm not much of a fan of an EM, because I don't feel that there's much to do. I do like EMs with drop targets. If it's nothing but lanes, they don't excite me, because I'd rather play a mid-80s to 90s, Bally or Williams table, and then have awesome lanes and ramps and, stuff like that. So I don't know. Yeah, they don't. I get the kitsch factor, and I can enjoy them for maybe a day or so, and then I'm just like over it. I'm done.
But for the cost of $1.50, that's exactly kind of the lifespan of the game, right? Like for $1.50, you've got plenty of enjoyment and a couple of days enjoyment out of it.
But that's where I say for $1.99, I can get a Zen table,
and you get a lot more depth.
And I'm going to be playing it for a long time. So that's
that's the other argument. Yeah, that's a fair call.
But like you said, at least there's no in-app purchases, or because when I was doing this digital pinball article, I downloaded a couple of games that I hadn't. I downloaded them a long time ago and deleted them off my phone, and I was looking at them again, and it was just like, people, have you never played actual pinball? Why are there right angles on the field? That everything needs to be smooth edged, and then the biggest sin would be you'd end the ball and all of a sudden an ad would pop up. I was like, oh, come on. I'm deleting you now because I don't want to deal with that. Do you know
what I'm thinking, Chris? I reckon that as part of our new website, I should bring back Pinball on Google Play. You remember where I was doing that?
Oh yeah, the terrible pins.
Yeah, the bouncy tits pinball. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Jiggler pinball, man. Do you know that I got a note from YouTube about that particular video? They asked me they asked me to reclassify it because apparently it contained naughty things in it, which made me laugh. Naughty bits. But I totally think I need to go back and do that again, because that was also incredibly disheartening, but at the same time, quite a lot of fun to do. So you can do your movie reviews. I'll do pinball on Google Play, and we'll meet in the middle.
Yeah. Wow. So last thing before we go, I wanted to mention this week's Zen tournament that BlahCade was hosting, which was playing Portal, has been brutal.
Oh, yeah?
So it started off right away with Ksenia, a.k.a. Sven, immediately calling me out and going, beat your score, go for it. And I was like, you jerk.
Oh, no.
And the problem was that I had never really played Portal pinball that much. And so I didn't, it seemed very impenetrable to me. Yep. So I hunkered down and finally was able to not only beat his score, which I think he was at like 70 million or something like that, but I posted like 230 million. I was like, aha! So that started him trying to come back at me. In the meantime, somebody else wound up posting like a 650 million score. I was like, oh, geez, that's so out of my realm. So all this week, I've been playing Portal. I got to say, I really enjoy it as a table. It's a good table. I'm having a bear of a time on certain angles that I'm trying to get the ball to, in that I can hit them normally, and then when all of a sudden it goes into timer mode, I can't hit them to save my life. And I was trying desperately to actually get to the wizard mode and complete it. And the more I played the game, the farther away I got from it. It's like I hit the wall and bounced backwards. So I wound up posting a score in the 700 millions and thought, that's going to secure me. And then when I looked to check the scores today, because the tournament is now ended on Saturday here, somebody had posted a 1.4 billion score. And basically I went from first place all the way down to fourth place. So it was a rather vicious week for pinball on that table. Apparently a lot of people really dig this particular one, and now I understand why they do. So if you haven't joined in on the weekly Zen tournaments, you need to do so. Just simply go into your the tournaments page, and under search, type in Shut Your Trap. That's SHUTYERTRAP. And then you'll find the tournament that we host every single week, different table every week. I think this week we're going to be playing Deadpool, and I'm going to figure out what. Yeah, I think I'm going to figure out what configuration. I'm not going to do the 3-ball again. I might do a 1-ball, might do survival. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But Deadpool will be the next table, and yeah, look for it. It's a lot of fun, and we've gotten more and more players each week, and it does not matter what platform you're on, because they all speak to Steam. They just don't speak to each other. But Steam does get to see everybody else's scores that get posted. So it doesn't matter if you're on PlayStation, Xbox. I don't know if Nintendo Switch works yet or not because they don't have all the same tables that we do.
Yeah.
But there you go. It's a blast. We have a good time.
Yeah, it would be fun. I really wish that the FX3 or features from FX3 would make their way over to mobile sooner rather than later, because I really want to get in on this action. But probably by the time they do it, it'll all be old hat, and it won't be any fun anymore. So that's a problem. Yeah. So
yeah, and I should mention I did get to play FX3 on the Switch, and I tried out their portrait mode, which is you basically only put in one of the Joy-Cons, down at the bottom, so you have the rumble from that, and then it's just like a normal mobile game where you're using your thumbs to flip the flippers, which I'm not a fan of, but I've since noticed people have been making little cardboard boxes to put their Switch into portrait mode on, and then attach the Joy-Cons to the side so you can still use buttons for flipping, which I thought was kind of trick.
Interesting, yeah. I think there's probably other options you can use, but using conductive foam and stuff, so you can actually like have little triggers below the table if you really want to get crafty. But yeah, it's touchscreens are okay. The thing that I don't like about playing with the touchscreen on pinball is just tilting is really hard. Unless the motion,
it's very difficult, and like I said, you don't play pinball with your thumbs; you play it with your forefingers. So.
It's all about your triggers.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, I'm triggered to end this podcast. How's that?
Okay, sure, let's do that.
So, folks, once again, why don't you go ahead and follow the show? That's the easiest way to get all the information that you ever need, and that is follow us on Twitter at BlahCade. You might as well, since you're already there, why don't you go ahead and follow myself? I am at Shut Your Trap, and he is at Jared Morgs. And then, most importantly, we will say it again, the URL you need to now type in is BlahCadePinball.com/episodes. That'll get you to the new website. Go ahead and bookmark us there so that you can laugh at me when I mess up on this next week, as I'm wont to do. Why don't you go ahead
always.
Always. Why don't you go ahead and fire off an email too? You can get in contact me just like Jeff from This Week in Pinball did. BlahCade@gmail.com. That way, anything you have to say, comments, questions, requests, we can respond to you in that manner. Alrighty. Well, we do appreciate you for listening to us. And Jared, I'll talk to you next week.
No problem. See you then. See you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.